Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Development Standards Committee. I hope everybody's had a good summer. Back to business. This meeting's been recorded, but it's also being broadcast live in the Angus Council YouTube channel. And I can remind all those joining us remotely to turn their microphones to mute, unless they wish to speak and indicate they wish to do so by raising their hands remotely. And also remind members that under Standing Order 19, open brackets 4, remote members attending hybrid meetings where quasi-judicial and regulatory matters are being considered will not be permitted to participate by audio only and must have their video and camera functions switched on. Right, start off. Laura, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Convener. Apologies from Councillor Doran.
Thank you. And do any members have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency for items on the agenda today? Nobody in the room? Nobody online? I can take that as read. Right, agenda item 3 regarding building warrants. This committee is asked to note during the period the 2nd of June to 1st of August of this year, a total of 97 building warrants, 1 demolition warrant and 32 amendment to warrants have been approved with an estimated cost of £19,791,184, and a copy of the approved warrants has been sent to every member. Is that noted? Thank you. Number 4, under delegated decisions, again, this committee is asked to note during the same period, 2nd of June to the 1st of August, a total of 102 applications have been approved and 6 refused under the Planning Acts through the scheme of delegation to officers. A copy of the list of delegated applications again has been sent to every member. Again, is that noted? Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the minutes of our last meeting held on the 10th of June of this year. They're there as read. Is there any comments or adjustments considered necessary to them? If not, are the minutes approved? Thank you very much. Right, we have 3 items on the agenda today for consideration. Agenda item 6 relates to report 173/25, dealing with planning application 24/00379/full, submitted on behalf of Delson Contracts Limited for a residential development comprising the erection of 39 residential homes, including formation of access roads, open space, landscaping, boundary enclosures and associated infrastructure on land at Beechwood Place, Kirriemuir. So we'll start off with Mr. Ted Taylor to present the slides, please.
Thanks, Convener, and good morning, members. So, as you have suggested, item 6 is a local level planning application for the erection of 39 residential units, including the formation of access roads, open space and associated infrastructure, and that relates to a site which is allocated for housing development south of Beechwood Place in Kirriemuir. So firstly, I draw members' attention to the extract from the Angus Local Development Plan located on the left-hand side of the screen, which just gives a general location of the site, which sits right to the south of the borough. Moving to the right-hand side, we can see in a bit more detail, the application site is identified by the approximate position of the red hatched line. It forms the western portion of an area of land which is allocated for development of around 100 dwellings. Members will see from the part of the slide below that previous phases of the scheme, phase 1, close to completion at this point, that has planning permission for 43 units with an additional detached house in the southeast corner, and the application before us seeks an additional 39 units, which takes the balance of the number of units on the site to 83, which is well within the land use allocation. In terms of surrounding land uses, members can see to the north of the site is a housing development on Beechwood Place, and there are obviously housing units completed and under construction in areas to the east of the site. The areas identified in pink are allocated or protected employment land, so we have the Logie Business Park located to the east of the site, and we have protected employment land on North Mains Road located to the west. In terms of compatibility of land uses, we have primarily residential uses surrounding the site to the east of the to the west of the site, on North Mains Road, we have a sort of vehicle repair tyre fitting business, the closest use. That's separated from the majority of houses within the site by an area of open space. Colleagues within Environmental Health have been consulted on the application and have no objection to the proposal in terms of land use compatibility. So this is an aerial photograph of the site. It's fairly recent, but you will see on the right-hand side we have the housing site under construction. That has developed further since the aerial photograph was taken, so there are now houses backing onto Beechwood Place in this location. That housing site is close to completion, with the exception of the affordable housing units in this area. The site itself currently or previously used agricultural land. We can see the location of the site relative to Beechwood Place to the north and to Glamis Road to the west of the site. Access to the site is proposed to be taken from Logie Road. There is an existing junction which serves both the existing housing site and the employment land located on Forfar Road in this general location. Logie Road will be extended further to the west to allow 2 new access points into the site. There is a part of Logie Road which the applicant does not propose to complete as part of the application, but I'll get onto that in subsequent slides. But this should give members an impression just of surrounding land uses, the proximity of the site to other housing and to surrounding employment uses. So in terms of the layout of the site, this is something which has amended or been amended during the life of the application, having regard to development plan policy and comments received from members of the public and the Community Council. But what we generally have is houses which overlook streets and the area of open space. We have a mix of single and 2-storey units. Car parking primarily designed to be sited at the sides of houses to reduce the dominance of cars in the street. Garden ground, generally speaking, to the rear of properties. The exception to this is the housing which backs onto Beechwood Place, and that isn't normally something we would promote as a design solution, but it is a continuation of what we see in Phase 1, and there is plenty surveillance onto Beechwood Place itself from housing located on its north side. So the open space I've touched upon will be located southwest of the site. That is at a level which is in accordance with council standards. And the Parks team has looked at that and is generally satisfied with how that would be laid out and designed. 9 affordable housing units will be delivered within the scheme, and the balance of affordable housing to take it to 25% will be made up via commuted payment. So that will be located in that area which is adjacent to the affordable housing which we're expecting to be delivered as part of Phase 1. But the layout, generally speaking, generally considered to accord with council design guidance, and has been amended to take account of public comment. In terms of the house types proposed, so a mix of house types, primarily 2-storey or 2-level houses. There are some bungalows as part of the scheme, single-storey properties are seen in house types 3 and 5. But the house types that we see before us are very similar to those which are found in Phase 1 of the development. So this is a photograph which is taken from the south side of Logie Road. So on the right-hand side, we can see the housing site which is under construction. So housing towards the north of the site completed close to Beechwood Place, and we can see in the foreground the raft foundations for housing to be erected in this area. That would almost be a finishing off of that scheme, save for the provision of affordable housing which is expected to come forward in this part of the site. On the left-hand side, we have the area where the housing site would extend into, so Logie Road in the foreground will be extended to the west as part of that. And on the right-hand side, we can see the single residential property, which has been located to the southeast of the allocated area. This is taken from the east of the site looking west along Logie Road. So again, the house we just saw the edge of the hedging of is located on the left-hand side here, Phase 1 located on the right-hand side, and we can see Logie Road in the foreground, and there is an expectation that will be continued to the site and through to Glamis Road as part of the condition requirements of the planning recommendation before members today. This is taken from the other side, so this is on Glamis Road, which is on the right-hand side here, and Beechwood Place on the left-hand side, and we can see in the foreground the area where the houses will be developed. This part of the site would contain the open space provision within the site, but it would just be a continuation really of the housing which has been developed in Phase 1. So the application is relatively straightforward in the sense that the application proposes housing on a site which is allocated for that purpose within the local development plan. But the proposal has attracted some public comment and some concern by the Community Council relating to some detailed aspects of the scheme. And members will see at the bottom of this slide, we can see the access road which would access the site. That's Logie Road. That is proposed to be taken to a point where it would allow 2 vehicular access into the site. But you'll see on the left-hand side, the applicant has not proposed to complete Logie Road, which would also act as a link road to the south of the town, taking some of the pressure off Morrison Street. Now, the applicant submitted information. In their view, the completion of Logie Road is not required to accommodate the development. And it would be fair to say, from a road capacity perspective, that is the case. However, planning policy, there is support in planning policy and the requirement for developments to be well connected, easy to move around, and for development to replicate the development pattern of surrounding streets. And if we see housing development to the northwest of the site, generally speaking, streets are connected to other streets to allow ease of movement and circulation. And officers propose a planning condition which would require the completion of Logie Road before any development within the phase 2 part of the site can take place. So that is a planning condition which is within the papers before members, and there's some discussion around the planning policy merits of that position in paragraphs 8.10 to 8.13 in the report. The Community Council and third parties also raised concerns about the requirement in the allocation for structural landscaping to be provided and the delivery of affordable housing, both the existing affordable housing requirement in phase 1, which is not yet complete, and the affordable housing which will be part of phase 2. Again, planning conditions are proposed which would require the phase 1 affordable housing to be completed before any development on phase 2 commences, and also requiring a scheme for the provision of structural landscaping on land to the south of the Spine Road to provide a suitable town edge. So the comments from the Community Council and by third parties have been considered. Modifications have been made to the design of the scheme, and planning conditions are proposed to secure those aspects relating to the completion of Logie Road, requiring structural landscaping, and to ensure that affordable housing is delivered at the appropriate time and before for phase 1 before phase 2 can commence. So the application, just to summarise, has attracted 8 representations and objections from Kirriemuir Community Council. Amendments have been made to the layout to try and address those concerns, and planning conditions, as I've alluded to, are proposed in the papers to secure the completion of those particular aspects that are referred to in the public comments. This is an application which has no objection from technical consultees, and it proposes to deliver housing on a site which is allocated for that purpose. Subject to the conditions in the papers before members, the proposal is considered to comply with development plan policy. There aren't, in the opinion of officers, considered to be any material considerations which would justify refusal of planning permission, and on that basis, the application is recommended for approval.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. We'll start off with questions for the officer. Any questions? Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Convener. I have heard what you've said, but just for 100% clarification, if I can maybe just check that one of the conditions are that the affordable housing agreed in phase 1 will be completed before phase 2 begins. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, condition 2B would require the provision of a legally binding planning obligation that would require the phase 1 affordable housing to be completed before phase 2 commences, and that obligation would also require the delivery of affordable housing in the second phase.
Just my second one, and that will be me complete. Just confirmation again that the condition, a condition attached to this planning application is that the road between, I'll call it the Forfar Road and the Glams Road, will be completed before any work starts on phase 2.
Yeah, absolutely correct. The proposed planning condition 3.1 would require the entirety of the link road approved through planning permission 15.01.097 to be completed before any development within the site can take place.
Thanks, Councillor Meehan. Can I just come back on that one just for clarification as well? talking about the link road, understand all of that, but when we're talking about the housing in phase 1 that's not yet been completed, does the road have to be completed before that's completed, or can that go ahead before the road's done?
Yeah, there's no requirement as part of the planning permissions for phase 1 for the road to be completed before that can take place. I think when phase 1 was approved, we'd already issued a planning permission for this link road, or the upgrading of Logie Road, so we had a reasonable expectation at that time that Logie Road would be completed. Subsequent to that, the applicant has suggested that isn't required, and they've given evidence in road capacity terms to demonstrate that probably is the case, but the requirement in planning policy for that to be completed isn't about road capacity, it's about connectivity. We think there is planning policy support for that to be required, and hence the recommendation that it is.
Okay, thanks, Mr Taylor. Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and apologies if this is an irrelevant question, but there was a bit of a stooshy many years ago about, I think it's Beechwood Place, which is an unadopted road and was then stopped up to prevent access through. Is there any intention to complete or to allow access to Beechwood Place as part of this scheme, or is that an irrelevant separate issue? I'm not totally familiar with the layout, but I remember that being stopped up to stop people using it, and that obviously was another link through to the Glams Road.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Duff. I might ask for some help from my colleague Mr Barnes on this one, but I can confirm at this stage that as the allocation of housing land for this site requires, that there is no vehicular connection to Beechwood Place, and Beechwood Place is a route which isn't a through route effectively, it is blocked up at the end. But Mr Barnes, maybe you can add to that.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. Yes, I can confirm that's correct, Councillor Duff.
Beechwood Place is separate and not in any way linked to this, apart from back as close.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And essentially, if we get the link road in, that will serve the purpose of connecting these two roads. And as someone, I think Mr Taylor said, it relieves the pressure on Morrison Street, which is a bit of a bottleneck in Kerry.
Councillor Cowdery?
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify first, do we have the applicant in the meeting today?
Sorry, no, we don't, no.
Okay, in which case this is going to be a question for our officers because of that, I guess. I'm really glad to see that you've put a condition in there around biodiversity and outlining some of the things you want to see in that respect. I'm a little bit concerned about the lack of detail that has meant that you've had to put that condition in, I suppose. So I don't know if you want to comment on that. And also, do you know in the new build housing plans whether there's any provision within the actual structural build of the houses for integrated wildlife measures, for example, Swift bricks? Because I'm always keen to get them in whenever possible. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Cowdery. So it's not particularly uncommon for us to attach planning conditions requiring the detail of landscaping arrangements. I entirely agree with you that it would be more helpful to us if it was provided up front. If there's less planning conditions, there's less work for officers to have to do after the decision's issued. But I mean, it is fairly common practice for this type of condition to appear on applications. There has been amendment to the layout and there would be incorporation of planting within the site. And as I've alluded to in the presentation, we're expecting structural landscaping to be provided to the south of the Spine Road. We don't have the detail of that at this stage, but the condition would secure that. In terms of biodiversity enhancement measures, I mean, this is a question we can bring to the developer to look at if they're prepared to incorporate those aspects. There's no rules per se saying what the biodiversity enhancement measures require to be. There are different options, as you suggest, that could be one of them, but that's obviously something that will be discussed as part of the discharge of any planning conditions.
Can I just come back on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could specifically actual integration of, for example, Swift bricks or other measures, I'd really welcome that, because new build housing, there's always a real opportunity to bring that stuff in, and it would be a shame to miss that opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cowdery. Councillor Braze?
Yes, thanks, Convener. My question is really one on policy, I suppose. I note that the Angus Local Development Plan has earmarked this area for around 100 houses. And if this is passed today, then we'll land up with 83 houses. That's 17% short of the 100, and of course 17% less affordable housing round about Kirriemuir. And my question really is, I understand fully the need for flexibility to get good planning and development outcomes. You know, forcing people to build exactly 100 houses isn't the best way. But I just wonder, what are the parameters for this? Or are there any? And, you know, if in this occasion, the developer decided that instead of building 100 houses or around about 100 houses, if he'd applied for just to build a dozen great big mansion houses on this development, we would surely have something to say. And I just wondered, is there a hard line where we'll say, well, no, that's not enough houses on this land that's allocated for 100?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Brace, and I think the answer to your question is yes. I mean, we are, when we say around 100, we mean around 100. I think 83 is less common you would expect. I mean, most people interpret around 100 as 120 in terms of house builders, so we wouldn't be prepared to accept something which delivered, let's say, 10 houses on the site, because that wouldn't be in accordance with the allocation. I think there's probably a limited amount of houses developed on this site because the position where the road has been formed doesn't go to the extreme south of the land allocation, which obviously sort of, I suppose, takes away the opportunity to absolutely maximise the land within the land allocation for housing. But I think, generally speaking, officers would be prepared to accept something either side of 100, and that's what we intended when we talked about around 100 houses.
Yeah, and there's no hard and fast rule. You don't have to build at least, say, 80%.
There was no hard and fast rule. We're more interested in securing an appropriate design and layout that provide good houses that are designed in an appropriate way.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I wanted to know. And just, you know, I do take a bit of cognizance of the fact that this is on prime agricultural land, or at least some of it. And, you know, we really need to try and maximise the number of houses we're building when we're using prime agricultural land, I think. Thanks for that, though.
Thanks, Councillor Brace. Any other questions? Nope. Online? Nope. Okay, thanks, Mr Taylor, for the stage. Okay, under Standing Order 12 of Angus Council, applicants, supporters and objectors are given the opportunity to address any points which they wish the committee to take into account in coming to its decisions. I'm ruling that speakers will be given 5 minutes only, and I'd remind speakers that members of this committee have already been provided with the opportunity to read all submissions and thus will be familiar with many of the points raised by speakers. This morning on this item, there is only one objector, Mr Mark Guild, on behalf of Elite Homes. Mr Guild, I see you're online. I see you've got 5 minutes. If once we get to 4 minutes, I'll give you a minute warning just so you can conclude if that's okay. Thanks very much. Just go ahead.
That's fine. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Elected members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Mark Guild and I speak to you today as a local house builder. We had a number of concerns initially with this application, mainly with regard to satisfying the requirements of NPF 4 and Angus Council's own supplementary guidance. This report largely deals with our concerns and I compliment Angus Council's planning department on the detailed content of their report. The whole objective of this meeting today is to grant the required planning consent to enable the delivery of housing as promised in the 2016 Local Development Plan. We are in a housing emergency. The delivery of housing is critical for our community. This is my main concern today. There has been little or no housing delivered in Kirriemuir since Guild Homes delivered 180 homes in the period 2008 to 2016. Beechwood is a housing site allocated by Angus Council in 2016 to deliver 100 private and affordable homes in the 10-year period to 2026. The allocation is the result of the many promises made by the developer, both to Angus Council and the public. To have your land allocated by Angus Council is a privilege. They have trusted you to deliver housing. As a developer, it is your duty to deliver the housing as promised. Delivering housing is not something you can choose to do, as and when you feel like it. To date, this development has not delivered as promised. A developer sitting on housing allocations and planning consents is doing nothing to achieve our shared objective, the delivery of housing, and finding a solution towards a housing emergency. The people of Kirriemuir have been starved of new housing for the last 9 years. It is now only reasonable to ask, when will this housing be delivered? I'm sure they will welcome the opportunity to purchase a new private home in Kirriemuir. The availability of affordable homes will be of equal benefit to the people of Kirriemuir. I welcome the efforts of Angus Council Planning Department and the use of planning conditions to ensure this development at last delivers the affordable housing and the link road always promised throughout the promotion of the development for allocation in Angus Council's 2016 Local Development Plan. As elected members, you now have the opportunity to ensure this development at last delivers for the people of Kirriemuir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Gould. Just initially, if you just bear with us, because there may be some questions from elected members. Have any members here? Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. It's a matter of clarification. Mr. Guild, you're a well-known, reputable local house builder. Do you have concerns about the housing supply in Angus?
I think everyone has concerns about the housing emergency, and the housing emergency is directly related to the housing position in Angus. We have a number of sites with planning consent or allocated in the local plan. I think in the top of my head, in the Forfar Kirriemuir area alone, I think there's maybe 450 sites that were due to deliver in the period to 2016 to 26, that haven't even started. So there'll be an ample supply of housing land, but if there's no one building on it, we're not going to get any houses. And I think it's housing delivery that's more important than the allocation of land. And that's one of the reasons today I've spoken up on this Delson application. They're one of the better ones. They have delivered, and more recently they've picked up a bit of pace in the last year, and they're moving on to deliver housing. So you have to say well done for that. But for all those that are land banking, planning consents and housing allocations and are not delivering, what is the point in a local plan, and what is the point of allocating housing or allocating land for housing if no one's going to deliver? So yes, it is a concern. It's a big concern for our own company, because we are effectively running out of land with planning consent for housing. And it's quite ironic. The reason we're running out of land is because we've delivered housing reliably, consistently, 50 houses a year for, I don't know, the last 10 or 15 years.
Mr. Gull, I'm going to come in here for a second. Councillor Nicholl, we're keeping the questions to this planning application, not to planning policy generally in Angus. So I'm going to finish on that point, because unless you've got a question on this specific planning application, Councillor Nicholl, we'll move on. Is there any other question? So for a question for Mr. Guild, please. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. There is a question for Mr. Guild. Yeah, obviously your comments are noted. Just to clarify, you are not objecting to this application. From your words, you seem to be supportive of this application. Is that correct?
I'm very supportive of this application, and indeed any application that's going to deliver housing in Angus.
Thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
Right, are there any other questions for Mr. Guild? No? Okay, thank you for your contribution, Mr. Guild, this morning. That's kind. You can stay in for the rest of the meeting or leave as you feel fit. We don't have any other speakers. The applicant agent aren't here, so it's down to elected members for any comments at this stage. Mr. Melville, go ahead.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, we do need many more affordable homes in Angus, as has been touched on. There's not been an awful lot of affordable homes delivered in the town of Kirriemuir in the last 10 years, so this is very, very welcome. I think the points that have been made about the conditions are absolutely crucial to this, about the delivery of the Phase 1 affordable homes and the link road, and I hope that that goes a long way in alleviating some of the concerns that have been raised, but I'll be supporting this.
Thanks, Councillor Melville. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Convener. Like Councillor Melville, I would support this application given the conditions attached to it. So with those conditions, I have no issues with this application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, everybody. Like my colleagues sitting here with my pad and pen, the conditions are the ones that I'm looking for, and I'm very happy to read them. Also, the first condition, the development to which this permission relates must be begun not later than the expiration of 3 years from the date of this grant. Now, that's standard, and it almost answers the problem that has been stated earlier. We expect that to happen, and if that goes on ad infinitum, we have policies, we have got ways and means of bringing people into line. You know, that's just the way it happens. But we've also got to remember that we have had hard times of late, and businesses will suffer from hard times. So we have the best intentions in the world, things happen, and things have a hiatus. So I'll be happy to watch this going through for the obvious reasons, for people. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Councillor McLaren.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I agree with the officer's recommendations and the conditions. Therefore, I support this application.
Thanks very much. Okay, if there's no other comments, I will just sum up on this one relatively briefly. We've heard what the proposal is. The planning application here is for, and for the delivery also of affordable housing within it. For clarification, NPF 4 Policy 16A indicates that development proposals for new homes on land allocated for housing in local development plans will be supported. The application site forms part of a larger 6-hectare area of land allocated in the ALDP for residential development of, as we've heard, around 100 dwellings. Thus, the scale of this development falls within that land allocation. As other members have mentioned, the site contains prime quality agricultural land. However, this site is within the development boundary for Kirriemuir, and the principle of using prime land for residential development has been considered and accepted through the allocation of the site for residential development. This site contributes to the housing land supply in the Council's housing land audit, and delivery of housing on this site would support the development strategy in the Angus Local Development Plan. The quantity of open space exceeds the Council policy requirement. Use of the open space for active purposes may be limited due to its proximity to roads, but there are opportunities for formal sports play in nearby Davidson Park. Objections have been submitted by the Community Council and third parties as a result of the applicant indicating they have no plans to complete Logie Road, which would have acted as a link road between Forfar Road and Glamis Road, as we've heard. Road Service have reviewed the information submitted and indicated that Forfar Road Junction has capacity to accommodate development without the need for the link road, again as we've heard. The plans as submitted would result in a 37-metre section of the link road not being completed. The Kirriemuir Community Council consultation response also raises concern that the strategic landscaping required by the land use allocation has not been included in the proposal or delivered in Phase 1. However, as we've heard, both of these matters and others are addressed by planning conditions proposed to secure delivery of both the strategic landscaping and the completion of the vehicular link to Glamis Road. The proposal is generally consistent with relevant Angus Local Development Plan and NPF 4 policies. No issues have been identified by consultation bodies that cannot be addressed by the planning conditions, and as such I am going to move approval of the application subject to conditions stated in the report. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Melville, thank you. Any other amendments? No, thank you. Planning application number 24/00379 is hereby approved. Thank you everyone on that one. And thank you, Mr Gill, for your contribution. Agenda item 7 relates to report 210/25, dealing with planning application 25/00305 by Property One Group for the change of use of an 8-bed guest house, hostel, to an 8-bed house of multiple occupancy at 2 John Street, Montrose. This application requires to be determined by this committee because it's recommended for approval in circumstances where there are 5 or more third-party objections and an objection from the Community Council. And again, Mr. Taylor, I ask you to present the slides.
Thanks again, Convener. As you've alluded to, item 7 is another local level planning application. This time it relates to a proposal which would change the use of what was previously an 8-bedroom guest house / hostel to enable it to be used for permanent occupation as a house of multiple occupancy, or HMO. This application applies to a property which is located at number 2 John Street, Montrose. So we'll start with the X side, which is the central area inset map from the proposals map, which covers the Montrose area. We can see the thick red line is the defined town centre for Montrose. The area coloured peach is the conservation area designation, which applies to this area, including the application site. The application site is shown by the approximate position of the blue arrow, and we can see a purple line which goes between the traffic lights where High Street becomes Murray Street to the north and down to the Bullhouse car park, which is the core retail area which protects, generally speaking, ground floor property within the town centre for retail purposes. Moving to the left-hand side, we have the site plan, which shows the property which occupies the corner of John Street and High Street. On the ground floor of the property, Bank of Scotland, I think, was located. I think that's fairly recently closed. The first floor of the property is the area we're considering today, which previously accommodated a hostel-type use. And in the upper floor of that property, it's understand there are 2 residential flats. On the right-hand side of the site plan, or the site application site shown by the red line, is an area to the rear which allows for 2 parking spaces to be provided, access from John Street. Within that area, you can see out with the parking areas as ample space for the storage of things like bins to keep them out of the public realm. So in terms of the planning policy position, MPF4 policy, Angus Local Development Plan policy, is supportive of proposals which reuse empty buildings. MPF4 policy 16 seeks to provide choice across different tenures that meet the diverse housing needs of people and communities across Scotland. Policy 27 from MPF4 is supportive of residential development within the upper floors of town centre property, recognising that can make a contribution to the vitality and viability of the town centre. It's also worth noting at this stage that the building is a listed building, it's within the conservation area, it's currently vacant, and the application before us would bring it back into a purposeful new use. So this is a photograph of the property we're considering. The first floor would accommodate 8-bedroomed HMO type use. So that's covered by the area we can see from the dashed red line. We can see to the bottom left, the blue arrow shows the position of the pedestrian access from John Street. This image slightly out of date in the sense that I believe Bank of Scotland is now shut, and we can see above the property is 2 residential flats which would share access with the proposal before us via a communal stairwell access from John Street. This photograph is taken from the rear of the property. The parking area which would be attributed to this use is identified by the 2 yellow signs. As you can see, in this general area, there's already waste facilities storage, and there's ample space within that area to accommodate waste management facilities associated with the development. On the right-hand side, we have a site plan which shows the layout of the building as existing, and that would not alter as part of the application. It's understood that the property was previously, I think, used by Baker Hughes as somewhere which accommodated staff which were using training facilities in Montrose, so people would come and stay in this while they carried out training courses in the town and potentially leave at the end of the week. There was no on-site supervision associated with that. And that is similar to how the use proposed would be. There will be no on-site supervision, but instead of it being regular turnover of people, it would be providing permanent residential accommodation for 8 persons. So in terms of the public interest in this application, we have objection from the Community Council. We have 12 letters of representation, including objections from the 2 flats which are directly above the application property. Concerns raised by third parties relate to amenity impacts, parking issues, concerns about lack of need or over provision, and potential impact on town centre regeneration initiatives. But as I've touched upon, the building was previously used to provide unsupervised short-term accommodation to parties training in Montrose, and in that respect, the nature of the use proposed is not drastically different. Again, no on-site supervision, but the same number of persons, albeit they will be permanently residing at this property rather than changing potentially each week. So amenity impacts or parking impacts unlikely to be significantly different from those which would be experienced by the existing lawful use of the building. In terms of concerns about the concentration of HMOs, the public register of HMOs on the council's website shows that there's actually only 2 HMOs within Montrose. This property, which was granted a licence by the Civic Licensing Committee in March this year, and Murray Lodge, which is a short distance to the north of the site on Murray Street. So there's no concentration of HMOs, and as I've alluded to, the property was granted an HMO licence by the Civic Licensing Committee of March this year, which is a licence granted for a 3-year period. At the end of that 3-year period, the person would need to renew the licence. That obviously gives the licensing committee at that time opportunity to review how the thing is operated. Were there any concerns? Obviously, there's no guarantee that a licence would be renewed. So that's an additional safeguard beyond the sort of issues set out in the recommendation before members. So in summary, there is development plan policy support for the reuse of vacant buildings in town centres. It is a listed building, it's in the conservation area, so it's important that we find a suitable new use for the property. The character of the use is unlikely to be significantly different in terms of impacts on neighbouring amenity from the previous use of the building. This is a proposal which has attracted 12 representations and Community Council objections, and we've tried to address the matters raised in those comments in the report before members. As I've alluded to, the licensing regime provides an additional degree of control where any issues, and the circular on HMOs is clear that we should make no assumptions about the behaviour of the potential behaviour of tenants in an HMO. That is not a planning matter that we should be concerned about. The circular talks about policies being introduced where there's an over-provision or over-concentration of HMOs, but it's clear from the public register in Montrose that is not the case. Only one other property other than this has an HMO licence within the town. This is an application which has attracted no objection from technical consultees, including colleagues in environmental health, in terms of amenity impacts. The proposal is considered to comply with development plan policy. The matters raised in public comments have been considered and hopefully addressed to members' satisfaction in the report. There aren't considered to be any material considerations which justify refusal of planning permission, and on that basis, the application is recommended for approval.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. Again, we'll start off with questions for the officer. Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just a question to clarify something. What are the regulations surrounding the provision of showers and WCs, and does this meet it properly? Because, you know, I've had a look at the rules, but they seem to change from place to place, and, you know, what are our guidelines for that?
So there are no planning rules as such relating to what happens inside and the level of services that will be provided. I'm certainly not an expert in the HMS licensing process, but I understand the purpose of that process is to ensure that it's operated by a fit and proper person and the accommodation is suitable for the intended use. So that's more likely to be covered by the the HMO licensing process, which I understand involves dialogue with colleagues in building standards. So it's gone through that process, has been granted a licence, but there is no planning policy requirement for a specific number of showers and that type of thing that exists.
Okay, so no design element to this at all.
Councillor Braze?
Yes, thanks, convener. Mine, I suppose, is maybe more just a matter of clarity. On page 7172 at 8.20, it's made clear that we're dealing with planning matters here, not with civic licensing committee business. It was really just to point out in the final sentence of 8.20, the licensing regime would allow action to be taken if, for example, serious issues arose related to antisocial behaviour associated with the HMO, and the licence would require to be renewed 3 years after its use. It was just to point out that the Civic Licensing Committee does not have to wait till 3 years when the licence is up for renewal before it can take really firm action if serious antisocial behaviour is taking place.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Braze, for making the point. Are there any other questions for Mr. Taylor at this stage? Oh, okay, thanks everyone. We have today both the applicant and agent present who are open to questions only. So I'll go straight back to you as members to ask whether you have any questions for the applicant or their agent at this stage. No? No questions at all? Okay, Councillor Clark, off you go.
Before I think about that, convener, can I just have their names, please, so I can address
Sorry about
people?
that. The applicant is Mr. Steve McAvenny and Ms. Tess Lavery. Or is it Lavery or Lavery? Lavery, thank you, who's the agent. Okay, Councillor Melville, off you go.
Yeah, thank you. Some objection is raised from members of the public related to parking. I just wondered if you could give us your assessment of the parking situation and any steps that you might take to kind of improve that.
Hi, yes, thank you. In terms of parking, there is unusually for the town centre actually behind what was previously the bank parking spaces, 2 of which are allocated to the to John Street, which is the in question, and other parking spaces were previously allocated to the bank below and to the flats above as well. So it's in fact, there's barely any cars parked in there at the moment anyway, so there's definitely 2 car parking spaces available, which is a very unusual situation to find in the centre of Montrose. And you know, from my own experience, it's fairly easy to find parking not too far away from the town centre, with the zones where you're not allowed to stay for any longer periods of time as well. So in terms of parking, we feel compared to a lot of places in Montrose, it's actually quite well served.
You want to come back, Councillor Melville?
It's, slightly, well, completely unrelated to that. In terms of energy efficiency, obviously, what we are looking for as a local authority is to ensure the delivery of safe, warm homes for people who need them. So are there any energy efficiency measures that you're looking to take to improve the warmth of the building and things like that, or are you pretty satisfied with how it is at the moment?
I can try and answer this, sorry. So we added increased insulation, we added all the energy efficiency guidelines we provided and probably increased, you know, the usual ones that you would expect around lighting, heating, replaced all the central heating system, the new boilers and everything, because it was out of date and it was going to cause us problems. So we put brand new energy efficiency things in, cased insulation. I think that's all I can think of. I'll probably think of more as soon as I walk out the door, but that's at the moment.
So I'll just carry up on that one. So that's something that you've actually upgraded the premises from the previous its previous use. Essentially, you're saying you've put in new boilers and better central heating and efficiencies in preparation for this.
Yeah. So the the property will be handed over to either to probably a government organisation, and the government organisation have high guidelines and stipulations, of which one of them is please ensure it's energy efficient, please ensure it's new boilers that go in, please ensure everything is not, you know, these are not high gas cookers that output lots. So they have a guideline list that we have to comply to align to the government.
Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just clarification. I think under 5, the applicant's case, you're saying it's for workers employed in the local area. I'm assuming here that this is accommodation for what one might call contractors who are working on projects in the area for short, medium-term period of time. Is that the sort of intended clientele?
Yeah, the contract will be with, like I stated, either the government or a wind farm organisation type of thing, that they would own it and they would manage it, and they would be responsible for everything in there and everyone in there as a contract.
I think that was kind of what I thought. Thanks for clarifying that.
Back in.
Yeah, sorry, following on from that, obviously that's not going to be a permanent arrangement, I assume. If it's based on projects and you've got a contract related to, I mean, you talked about wind farms, for how long do you foresee that being the kind of intended use? And past that point, do you have a view as to what might happen to this building once it's no longer used for that? And I appreciate that's looking quite far in the future potentially, but you know, obviously as an authority we've got to plan ahead in terms of this kind of thing, so it would be useful, I think, for us to have your view at this stage as to what the future of the building might look like.
Sorry. So as you said, I'm unsure, I can't go over the 6 years, but at the moment the intention is that the government would pick this up for a 6-year contract, and they would, it would be a fixed contract that they would pick up. I don't know after that, because they've been very secretive, I think is probably the word about it. They're just, but that's where we are.
Okay. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, folks. Mr McAvenny, just in terms, and we're just being a wee bit nosy at times, honestly, but that's our job. But in terms of an HMO, and I come from another area where HMOs are in abundance, really, so I'm used to them. They're very, very useful and necessary. They have to be managed properly. And very rarely is there anybody on site, so we can't expect that. It's not a condition or anything. So very rarely is anybody on site to manage it. But just in terms of, we've always got to be aware of nuisance value in anything. And when people write to us, we always take cognizance, and community council, etc. We have to take cognizance, and we should be aware of anybody. So anybody making any comments which are legitimate about noise, etc. So I'm just wondering, is there any way that you can, first of all, say that there definitely would be a mechanism for people to put their concerns, should there be any? We're hoping there wouldn't be any. I don't expect you to be able to tell me there's a concierge there, because that's nonsense. But by the same token, there would have to be a mechanism for doing that, and I just want you to please confirm that.
Yeah, I can answer a part of that. So the wind farm and the government have I can't remember the word, I don't know if they call it a deputy, but let's call it a team leader. He's a responsible person for there. So for example, when the house was moved from a guest house to an HMO, the rules are a lot stricter around fire risk, you know, emergency lighting, all these types of things. And there needs to be a named person who every month, when the tests come in to check the fire extinguishers and to check all these, this is the named person who's accountable and reports back to the government if there are any problems, or if any, you know, if anyone causes any noise or any disturbances, he's the person, he's the liaison with them on that.
If we can just come back in. So what you're describing really is a team call area, and that's fine. That's just really what I needed an awareness for, and an acceptance of and a confirmation of. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or their agent? I can't see any other hands up. Oh, okay, we'll move to comments then from members. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean, I think I know there's local objections here from the Community Council. My view is that there is clearly a demand for this sort of accommodation in Montrose. A few months ago, we had an application from another outfit to repurpose the former homeless unit at the other end of the high street, and that was to meet, I think, the same sort of demand we're seeing here. This particular premises, and I think Mr. Taylor mentioned a local oil company that had used it as a residential accommodation for people on training courses. From my knowledge, I think it was also used as an overspill by a local hotel some time ago. So it's had this sort of use before. And I think there is a need for this sort of accommodation. I suspect there are some unregulated premises in Montrose that are being used for this type of operation, and at least in this occasion the applicant has got the HMO licence and is now coming to planning, so it has been properly regulated. The other point that was made about parking really for me is a non-point, because I would guess there's about 150 residential addresses in the high street that are occupied, and they have 0 parking spaces. So really nobody in the high street has a parking space. You have to find it outside the high street, and clearly this accommodation has got 2 parking spaces, so that's, I would suggest, 2 more than there is in the whole of the high street. So I don't think parking's an issue. I think we need workers to do a number of different, there's always a lot of contractors in Montrose in various different places. We need accommodation for them, and I think it's better that we are providing accommodation in a premises like this that is being regulated by the HMO rather than not being regulated somewhere else. So I'm supportive of the application.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Duff. Any other comments from members? Councillor Brace.
Yes, well, really, I would just echo what Councillor Duff has said. In planning terms, I see no reason whatsoever that we should refuse this. When it comes to the objections, they're kind of divided into 2. One is all sorts of things like parking issues, etc., which I think Councillor Duff did explain why that wasn't really an issue compared to what's been previously going on at those premises. And the other one is the fear of antisocial behaviour, etc., which is a matter for the Civic Licensing Committee. And as I said earlier, the Civic Licensing Committee does not have to wait 3 years and has enormous powers, really. I believe they can revoke the licence any time they want if it's bad enough. So, so I'm quite comfortable with this application. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bayes. Again, I can't see any other hands up here. So, again, I'll just sum up. I think I come from an era when this was looking at the design that this would be called an 8-bedroom flat. And to be fair, having lived in one that was 7 bedrooms, it's very similar. I understand the concerns of bathrooms and showers and toilets and supported kitchens and things. But as it is, the application is permission for change of use to an 8-bed house of multiple occupancy. I think the key things to note here are a few. The proposal does not provide for any external or internal alterations. The management of the HMO will be suitably undertaken by a third party. Density of occupants in the building, as I've heard, will remain unchanged from its current occupancy. As Councillor Duff has said, bringing 8 paid employees to the local area will have a positive impact for local business and facilities. There are private parking spaces associated with the property, and an HMO licence, we should be aware, was granted at this property in April of this year. Although, as we've heard, it should be noted that the licensing process and planning process are separate legal processes. The reuse of a vacant upper floor of a town centre listed building to provide additional residential accommodation attracts support from development plan policy. The building was previously used in a manner likely to result in similar impacts to the use proposed in this application. I understand concerns that neighbours and others may have with the application, which include asking details about who will occupy, etc. However, our job is to agree to the determination of use and not the user. That's the issue here. So if permission is granted, it would be for a 3-year period only initially. I think that's correct, Councillor Taylor, yeah? And the proposal is broadly in accordance with the development plan policy, as I've mentioned, and no material considerations justifying refusal. So I'm moving approval, subject to the aforementioned proposed conditions in paragraph 10 of the report. Councillor Duff, you happy to second? Thank you. Any amendments? No, thank you. In that case, planning application number 25/00305/full is hereby approved. Thanks for your contribution this morning. Thank you. Members, I'm going to suggest a 10-minute recess for a comfort break, because I do think the next item may have a bit more debate and things to it as well. So can I just be happy with that? 10-minute recess? Thank you.
Can you stop the live stream, please?
Right, welcome back everybody, thank you for that. Right, we move on to the final item on the agenda today, agenda item 8, which relates to report 211/25. The report deals with planning application number 24/00664 submitted on behalf of Mr Kay Pirrie for the change of use from offices to nursery and after-school care facility and associated works at the Mart, 13 Market Street in Forfar. Again, this application requires to be determined by our committee because the council has a financial interest in the development, and the application is recommended for approval in circumstances where it has attracted objection. So I think, Ms Ramsey, you're to take over this one.
Yes, thank you. This application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of an office to a nursery and aftercare facility at the 13 Market Street in Forfar. The site has no land use designation, as you can see from the settlement statement plan in front of you, and it is located in the northern area of Forfar. To the west of the site is the county buildings and the Sheriff Court. To the north of the site is business units. To the east are residential properties, and to the south a mixture of business units and residential properties. The existing building has 3 floors and occupies the eastern part of the site. There is a small car park to the west of the site, accessed from John Street. Only the south part of this car park, of around 8 spaces, forms part of the application site. The main access to the building is on the north side of the building, with a pedestrian stairway to Market Street down the east side of the building. The building was occupied until around four years ago as offices for the council, but it has been vacant since then. All floors of the building would be occupied as the children's nursery, and part of the car park, as you can see here, would be changed into 3 play areas. 2 car parking spaces would be retained for disabled badge holders, and bicycle parking spaces would be provided to the north of the building. 16 are shown on the drawings, but condition 2B requires a revised scheme for a minimum of 8 covered parking spaces for bicycles. In terms of external changes to the building, they consist of the removal of the existing access ramp on the north and west elevation, and installation of a platform lift to the northern elevation, and the installation of a kitchen extracting system, as you can see here on the west elevation, as well as a door which will provide access to a new raised deck area. The garden area will be enclosed by a 1.8 metre green mesh weld fence, as you can see down here at the bottom of the screen. The planning service have the opinion that the external alterations of the building are minor and would not have an adverse impact on the appearance of the building or the character of the surrounding area. Looking at the principle of development, both National Planning Framework 4 and the Local Development Plan support the reuse of brownfield land and redundant and derelict buildings. The site may not be located in the town centre, but it is located in an established commercial area where the introduction of a community use would contribute to local living in this area of the town, which is close to residential areas. The site is also midway between Whitehill Primary School and Forfar Academy. Planning Service is content that the reuse of the vacant building will provide a benefit to the local community and will not have a significant impact on the town centre. With regard to amenity, the use would generate additional activity in the area with the use of the outdoor play area, as well as dropping off and picking up children. The Environmental Health Service have assessed the information submitted and have no objections to the proposals. The Planning Service is content that the opening hours of 7:30 to 6 p.m. would not be incompatible with the surrounding land uses, and the impacts on amenity would not be unacceptable. As outlined in section 7 of the report, there have been 3 letters of representation received from 2 separate households. The main areas of concern relate to road traffic and pedestrian safety and inadequate parking. The submitted transport statement outlines that the site is well located to facilitate trips by sustainable travel and is not over-reliant on access by private car. There are 4 bus stops within 400 metres of the site, and the site is easily accessible by foot or cycle of a large residential area. There would be no designated drop-off and pick-up area, but the information submitted concludes that the proposed use would generate minimum additional demand for car parking, and specifically less than a return of the building to office use, which would generate, and that the existing on-street and off-street parking provision would be able to accommodate the demand. The road services reviewed the information provided, have no objections, subject to the addition of conditions for the provision of a suitable cycle parking facilities and an approved travel plan. National Planning Framework 4, Policy 13 specifically, is supportive of proposals which are ambitious in terms of low or no car parking, particularly in urban locations that are well served by sustainable transport modes and where they do not create barriers to access by disabled people. Given this consideration that the reuse of the building as a childcare facility is in line with policy in this location. In conclusion, the proposed development would provide new community use for a vacant commercial building in an accessible location close to a large residential population. It would contribute to local living by providing local access to a new childcare facility. There are no objections from consultees, and the proposal is consistent with development plan policies. There are no material considerations that justify refusal of planning permission. Therefore, the Planning Service recommends that permission is granted subject to conditions. Is there any questions? I'll happily take them.
Thank you, Ms Ramsey. So we've heard from the officer. We'll start with questions for the officer, Councillor Melville.
Yeah, thank you. I think generally my view is that additional capacity for early learning and childcare is a very good thing. What discussion has the Planning Service had with our Education Department about capacity and demand in the area around early learning and childcare?
As far as I'm aware, none, but given this isn't a public facility, this would be private. So it would be in addition to any of those that are provided by the Council.
Councillor Meakin, you were next.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Mine's is more a point of clarification and what I heard, if that's okay. You said there were 4 bus stops within, I heard 4 metres. 400. 400. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener. And Convener, would it be okay if I addressed Mr Barnes?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. Nothing desperate, I promise, Andy. Am I right in thinking, Andy, that roads don't have any objections, per se, to this application?
Yes, so the applicant submitted a transport statement in support of the application, which the Road Service has reviewed, and on that basis, although there were original concerns about picking up and dropping off at this particular location, as has been identified, there are public transport facilities close by, the opportunity to walk. There's national planning policy for developments with low parking. So on balance, the Road Service has not objected to the application.
Thank you, Mr Barnes.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Any other questions of the officer? Councillor Duff.
Yeah, I probably had a follow-up question for Mr Barnes. I mean, I think there is a bit of concern about the sort of dropping off, picking up children, and we know the sort of chaos we have around our own primary schools at whatever it's 8:30. I had a drive into the car park last night, and I think there were 3 cars parked in the car park. I think this morning I had a drive in and there were 3 cars parked again. Now, the question is, what is your vision of are people going to use that car park on the between the proposed nursery and the building behind that, which seems to be a series of lockups or storage facilities? Are you expecting people to drive in there, drop their children off and come back out, or how are they going to get, because we're talking about a nursery, so we're talking about 2 to 5-year-olds, so you aren't just going to open the door and throw them out. You're going to have to stop and ensure they get into the school safely, so there needs to be a place to do that. And what's the vision of how that's going to happen?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. No, we don't envisage them entering that car park and going to beyond. They will have to find space on street nearby There is the County Buildings car park. Although it's not a public car park, it is available for public use if there is space. There'll be space early in the morning, but for most of the time during the day, it's usually full with staff and visitors to the Sheriff Court building as well. The nearest public car park is East Greens car park, which is approximately 500 metres from the site. So any dropping off and picking up is most likely to happen in the nearby streets. But round about the site, the roads are heavily protected with waiting restrictions.
Can I ask we get the slide up with the overhead that shows the streets in the area?
So, it's not too dissimilar in that respect to the Wendy House nursery, which was just round the corner on North Street, which again, that was protected by extensive waiting restrictions as well.
Just on that, again, I'm familiar with the area, but the car park that you're referring to that's 500 metres away, can we see that on that, or is that out with that plan?
That's correct, yes.
Right. So, with all due respect, it's a significant distance. Councillor McLaren?
Thank you, David. It's a question for Mr Barnes. The car park at the back of the county buildings is quite a large car park. It's not too far from the actual location. I think, what, 100 yards possibly? And there is a footpath from there down to the actual location. Could you just clarify that?
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Sorry, problems with the microphone there. Yes, there's footways on both sides of John Street from the car park. Yeah, it'll be about 100 metres approximately. But as I say, during the day, it's usually quite busy. So there'll be little opportunity for picking up and dropping off from that car park for most of the time.
Any other questions for the officer on this one? Not online either. Okay, we have the agent and the applicant. The agent is Mr. Barr, and the applicant, Ms. Pirrie, are both online and are willing to take questions. They're not presenting. Am I right in saying that, Mr. Barr, Ms. Pirrie, you're just open to questions, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Right, so we'll start from that. Have anybody got... Okay, Councillor Melville. So, yeah, so Mr. Barr and Ms. Pirrie, if you just respond to any questions from members and there may be follow-up supplementaries, okay? If you just bear with us. So, Councillor Melville first.
Thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to answer questions from us today. Given what we've heard about the very limited parking nearby, in terms of your operation, should this go ahead, how much communication will you be making to parents and carers about the lack of parking nearby? Because obviously what we don't want is to see the kind of traffic chaos, as has been alluded to, that we occasionally will get outside some of our primary and secondary schools at pick-up and drop-off time. We don't want that, particularly with the waiting restrictions in the streets nearby. So I think in terms of the operation, how much communication are you going to give in advance to parents and carers about that?
Okay, yeah, no, thank you, Councillor. Sorry, got a bit of background noise there. Not better now. Yeah, no, taking on board your comments there, I think the concerns about car parking and drop-offs are probably a bit different to what you would experience in a primary and secondary school environment. This is not a facility that would be open from a set time and close at a set time. So there's going to be staggered drop-offs that can be from as early as 7:30 in the morning through to after 9:30 in the morning. So you've got a 2-hour window there where there could be irregular drop-offs and pickups rather than it all being condensed to one set time. And likewise, that would be the same approach during the day, which would potentially have half-day pickups and drop-offs, and likewise in the evening as well. So I think the concerning factor, which was obviously discussed quite a bit about transportation and movement, is that, you know, between John Street, kind of adjacent to the site, car park to the rear and other on-street car parking, there is adequate facility there to can alleviate any of these concerns. I think probably the bigger picture is our client is pushing for quite an active approach to the facility that she's providing, encouraging the use of public transport, encouraging the walk on foot to the facility, and that echoes in our current operation that she runs, being the unit down the Teletots down in Forfar at the moment. So I think between the two of them, I think we're trying to push away from encouraging driving and drop-offs that way, and it's more this active lifestyle that's trying to be echoed through the applicant's application here.
Okay, if Councillor Miller want to come back.
Yeah, thank you. This one then might then be for Ms Perry in terms of, with the established model that we've just heard from Mr Barr, do you therefore have a kind of standard means of communication to parents and carers, encouraging them not to come by car, for instance? It would be good, I think, for us just to have a little bit of detail of that.
Hi there, good morning to all. Yes, I mean, the facility I run right now, we've run for 15 years, and I've had one member of staff, for example, who has driven. Everybody else has dropped off and picked up by spouses or whatever else. In relation to, again, the facility we've got right now, and I would continue this with the new setting. On visitation, initially, a walk around the site and an explanation of exactly where they can drop off and pick up if necessary, but then again explaining that we definitely encourage the use of public transport, cycling, walking. At the moment, I do pickups and drop-offs when it's necessary. That service would also be offered.
Mr Clark.
Thank you, Convener. Ms Perry, if I can maybe just ask something of you, please. I've got experience in nurseries in my past, and I've been delighted to see that we're still seeing nursery nurses out with wee crocodiles, the bairns with their high vis on altogether. And where I used to live, there was provision maybe in a local car park, let's just say a big supermarket, just will not name it, where there can be a provision that maybe a member of staff can arrange to pick up children from there. It's just a thought. But also at your doors, it's always been my experience anyway, where you have, again, members of staff. So if a very busy parent's coming in and walking, whatever, on the bus, or somebody's dropped them off, they would always be, this is almost a comment and a question really, but I'm sure you've got staff there that can take these children, providing they're not hysterical, just from whoever at the door, to kind of try, and what I'm trying to say here, have we got methodology to alleviate? Because I really do want to see people coming on buses, and I want to see them walking and on bikes, etc. But I'm also realistic.
Yeah, at the moment, we do exactly that. We have a member of staff at drop-off and pick-up time. But like Darrell had said, you know, drop-off and pick-up time, unless you're very, you know, by the book like nurseries. I mean, even then, they have a window now of drop-off and pick-up. People are arriving at all different times. But there are a member of staff by the door, by the camera, and picking up the children so that the parents are not having to come in. Because a lot of them are running, you know, with 2 or 3 seconds to spare before they have to get away to their work. So yes. As for meeting somebody in the middle of the town, that's something that we could look at if we found that it would be beneficial. That wouldn't be an issue, but there would certainly be a member of staff available to cover that, yes.
I'm kind of comforted with that because I think that helps children in their walking as well, because it has been done, and I would like that to, I mean, certainly no looking for a condition or anything, but I'd like it to be considered. Thank you.
Thanks, Thanks, Councillor Clark. Again, any other questions for either the applicant or the agent? Okay, no other questions. So, well, for the state at this moment, Ms. Berry, thank you, and Mr. Barr for taking time to answer these questions so far this morning. Comments from members on this before we move any further? Any comments? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener. And just so we are on comments, I'll stick to that entirely, and I'll stick to what's in front of me as usual. The reason for a nursery, I don't have to preach to anybody, is obvious. We've got wraparound care here, etc. We've been asking questions to which I'm satisfied with the answers. So I think, I'll quote Mr. Barnes there, on balance, I'm comfortable with the answers that is given about traffic, etc. I would like to see everybody out their cars, forlorn hope. I do see a lot of bairns walking about though. They walk about for in their crocodiles, so maybe that can keep on going as well. And there absolutely is need for nursery space. We lost a nursery to a fire a couple of years ago. Parents didn't just disappear into the ether. They had to go somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Any other comments? Councillor McLaren.
Yes, thank you, Convener. This application would provide a new use for a vacant commercial building into a nursery and after-school care facility with current limited childcare places in Forfar. I would consider this to be a most welcome business to the town. I would therefore fully support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Councillor McLaren. Anyone else? Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I think this application is eminently suitable for people who are choosing active travel to get the bairns there. And to refuse it on the grounds that there's no enough space for people or provision for people to drop off children from their cars. I think that would be completely perverse. This council has a policy of encouraging active travel, and to turn down somewhere just on the grounds that that there's not suitable space for people to drop off children from motor cars, that flies in the face of everything else we're trying to achieve here. So highly supportive of this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, I think we have to be sensible here. In my experience, most children will get dropped off by car at nurseries. I have a couple of grandchildren, and that's my experience. So that's the reality. What the ideal might be. Having said that, we've got lots of nurseries I can think of in Montrose, which are located pretty close to the town centre and don't have ideal drop-off spaces, but it seems to work well enough. And Mr. Barnes has given us his input here. I would have thought myself that this car park could have been used as a drop-up, but there appears to be issues there. And if the parents have got to walk them from where they stop their car into the nursery, then if that's a business model that works, then fine. I think that's similar to other town centre nurseries, so I think it would be unfair to apply an idealistic standard. We're not talking about greenfield sites here. We're talking about a good use for a brownfield site and a building that had been an office. And I think the other thing about it, a nursery provision from 7:30 to 6 o'clock is, I think, ideal. There's lots of parents working who want that sort of service, and the nurseries that are open from 9 to 3 are fine for some, but don't meet everyone's needs. So I think you've got to look at that, and I think it's a good use of the building. And I'm satisfied with the suggestion from Mr. Barnes that the streets roundabout are used for dropping of people if they are using cars. And my gut feeling is 80% will be coming by car, but that's the cynical me.
All right, thanks very much, Councillor Duff. Again, any other comments from members? No? Okay. I'll sum up. I do have concern personally a little bit here. I've got to balance the application, and I think, as we find in life, theory is a great thing, and I know NPF will support for active travel, but we've got to get the public to support the idea of active travel. So I'm with you, Councillor Duff. I think the bulk of people will be getting dropped off by cars and there'll be a bit of a melee at times. We've got to balance that with the application in whole, as I see it. So the proposal, let me just get this right, but the proposal would generate additional activity in the area associated with the dropping off and collection of children. I think that's undoubted. Clearly, the proposed use would generate traffic, and representations are submitted identifying concerns in relation to parking, access and the suitability of the proposed use in relation to road safety matters. However, we have got the transport statement that's been submitted, and as members have said, our roads team, Mr Barnes, are content with that. Where access by private car is used, the nature of car parking demand is likely to be shorter term use associated with the drop-off and collection of children, and longer term car parking demand is likely to be less than the existing lawful use of the premises if this was an office use of the premise. A number of policies support this development, including ALDP policy DS1 and National Planning Framework policies 9, 13, 15 and 27. The Angus Local Development Plan indicates that public community facilities such as schools, healthcare, libraries, museums, halls and leisure facilities are important assets playing a key role in terms of quality of life and attractiveness to Angus as a place to live and visit, work and visit. Our policy TC8 indicates that new community facilities should be accessible and of an appropriate scale and nature for the location. Hearing all that I've heard today and bearing in mind the proposed potential areas for parking in the vicinity, I'll take that on board and agree that the proposal complies with development plan policy subject to proposed conditions, and such I'll go ahead and move approval subject to those aforementioned proposed conditions in paragraph 10 of the report. So I'm moving approval. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Clark, are there any amendments? No. Thank you. In that case, planning application number 24/00604 is hereby approved. Thanks everyone for your contributions. It brings the meeting to an end. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Can we stop the live stream, please?